You mean real science, for one thing, for an exaggeration and correlation.
Killed more people than they saved, and many more still who know that SARS coronavirus 2 was manufactured and leaked from a lab, whether accidentally or deliberately. How and why do people know this exactly? Let's talk about it. We've discussed all of the lies surrounding COVID vaccines and vaccines in general at great length on this channel. I have very long and detailed videos exposing the fraudulence of figures like Bobby Kennedy, Andrew Wakefield, Steve Kirsch, Pierre Corey, Brett Weinstein, and all the lies they've told regarding vaccines.
What
So
about
check out
Fauci?
those videos if you haven't seen them
What
yet.
about
But as
Fauci?
many brainwashed anti-vaxxers as there are, the so-called lab leak theory is a much more subtle and pernicious thread of lies and pseudoscience, which points towards a grift that is far more entrenched in Zero as a researcher at the Wuhan Institute of Virology and linked him to a super secret plan for manufacturing a virus. His reasoning appears ultra sophisticated, referencing primary scientific literature and everything, while also clamoring for the retraction of a paper that substantiates a natural origin for the virus. Since that video was about his climate change denial, this information was shown simply to demonstrate that he slings
So, debunking other pseudoscience that carbon dioxide travels one way.
conspiracies in many different areas, and we didn't rigorously dissect these claims. But this video is about precisely this topic. So we're going to look at the alleged evidence put forth by many figures, Matt and Alina among them, who made a lot of noise with this grift, so that we can expose every last lie that goes along with it. Sound good? Great. Let's get started. The first thing we have to do, as always, is explain the actual science. It might get a little boring for a few minutes, but this will help provide the appropriate context with which to
Only to
expose the
distract.
false narrative in all of its ignorance and deception. For those who are still not aware, all of the evidence points to a zoonotic origin for SARS coronavirus 2. This word means that it came from animals and thus has a natural origin, just like every other novel
How do we know not the other way around? Maybe the bad got from humans.
virus behind every other pandemic in human history. Does that mean we know this with 100% certainty? Not quite. Science is rarely, if ever, that certain. But the point is that all the available evidence points to this conclusion, and reviewing this evidence will allow us to see the fallaciousness of the narrative that is presented against it. Check out this graphic, which asks, where did SARS coronavirus 2 come from? And the 10 lines of evidence that must be discussed in order to answer this question. These are case epidemiology, natural genome, multiple introductions, 2 original lineages, hotspots, outbreak site, history, animals at the market, environmental swabs, and recombination. Some of this will be best discussed as we refute false claims, but let's hit some of it now. The first question is, did the first COVID cases show up anywhere near the Wuhan Institute of Virology or in people associated with the lab? And the second question is, did the lab possess this virus, or could it have created the virus? Starting with the first one, when the outbreak was noticed at the end of 2019, multiple different hospitals in Wuhan had independently recognized patients with a new unknown type of pneumonia. Many of them were connected with the Huanan Market, a live animal and seafood market in Wuhan, one of 4 such wet markets in the city. This report in Science notes precisely this, with 66% of the first cases being associated with the market after rigorously tracing every point of contact. Community transmission very strongly appears to have started at the market. This other report in Science corroborates this fact, that the earliest known cases were centered on this market. This is not definitive proof, it's just a clue. Cell published a
How to
critical
connect
review
them?
on origins as well, identifying 2 lineages and reviewing phylogenetic and epidemiological data. It also specifically acknowledges lab leak, admits it is not without precedent, but that the scenario does not fit the data, remarking that known laboratory outbreaks can always be traced back to workplace and family contacts of index cases, and geographically to the lab of origin. We will return to this paper later. Subsequent studies by the WHO and independent researchers in early 2021 all found that most of the early cases were clustered around this market, and that the link holds when controlled for population density, age, and ascertainment bias. This isn't conclusive all on its own, but it's clearly inconsistent with the virus coming from the WIV or its BSL-4 lab, both of which are relatively far away, 40 minutes by car, on the other side of the Yangtze River. The first and only outbreak was associated with a wildlife market and nothing else, despite there being many other places more likely to see a massive outbreak cluster than such a market. So what's up with this market? Many Chinese authorities didn't want anyone to know what types of animals were at this market, and they repeatedly denied that live animals of any kind were present there. This is a lie. Plenty of reports have demonstrated that the market was full of live animals, in cages, many of them sick, coughing, spluttering diarrhea on the floor, slaughtered with their guts left on the ground. It's trivial to wrap your head around how a pathogen could get spread here. There are plenty of papers describing this situation in detail, highlighting specific SC2 susceptible animals that were being sold in that market up until December 2019. This one in Nature reports over 47,000 individuals from 38 species, and specifically noted the poor conditions for the animals. When the Chinese CDC came to investigate, animals had been hastily removed, but they were able to take environmental samples. This paper, also in Nature, reports on the surveillance of SARS coronavirus 2 at the Huanan market. The highest viral positivity was around shops where live animals were sold, based on samples taken from cages, sewers, even a defeathering machine, despite no human-associated cases with that shop. Sequencing of these samples produced isolated animal sequences together with viral RNA. Badger, bamboo rat, and raccoon dog sequences were the most prevalent, and raccoon dogs have been implicated in a different SARS outbreak in 2003. Subsequent analysis showed that raccoon dogs were susceptible, able to shed SC2 efficiently, and wild-caught in the south of China, thus linking the virus to the wildlife trade. Additionally, as is described by this paper in Cell, the initial outbreak was associated with two different viral lineages, A and B, separated by two nucleotide substitutions, and responsible for roughly 1/3 and 2/3 of cases, respectively. Both of these lineages were linked to the market, consistent with phylogenetic evidence of two successful zoonotic spillovers into humans. Again, this makes perfect sense, given the proximity and high intensity of contact between humans and infected animals. The case is exceptionally strong that both lineages were transmitted within the Huanan market and radiated outwards from there. The original variant was not especially contagious. It was demonstrated that a single spillover would die out 70% of the time on its own, after infecting one or two people, thus unable to sustain human-to-human transmission. The existence of two lineages implies that there was a contagious animal population that infected humans multiple times until transmission chains became
Wait, two lineages? So probably both cases could be true, or they could be mixing them.
This multiple spillover scenario, combined with phylogenetic clocks and phylogenetic polytomies, or the specific shape of the viral family tree, all indicate multiple introductions from an animal population. One can quickly see how this is not particularly compatible with the idea of a singular lab leak incident. Multiple introductions.
So it was a multiple lab.
Lineages taking off a week apart from each other, this would require multiple leaks of different viruses that would both irradiate from the same location, which was full of sick animals constantly shedding viruses, nowhere near any such laboratory, and not occurring anywhere else in the city. Occam's razor is our friend in this scenario.
Then again, that's where you would get a lot of specimens, so.
But Dave, that's how the Chinese government wants you to think.
Or that's just how you would get where they probably got their specimens.
They did absolutely everything they could to make it look like it came from that market, all the way down to leaking two different viruses from the same spot. Alright, well then let's talk about whether any such lab even possessed this virus in the first place. First, a little history. Zoonotic coronaviruses are extremely common. This review talks about the origin and evolution of.
Yes, it turned out to be a common flu. He used a lot of evidence used in this video is the misinformation by the death rate, and many of the deaths were just correlation.
This review talks about the origin and evolution of pathogenic coronaviruses, including SARS-1, MERS, and others. Grab this paper from the description if you'd like to learn a lot more about this family of viruses. This older review in virus research talks about animal reservoirs for SARS coronavirus 1, or SC1. SC2 shows many parallels with SC1. Coronavirus genomes from a metatranscriptomic study of 411 bat samples from diverse mammalian. As for the Wuhan Institute of Virology, there is no evidence of the institute ever having found, collected, cultured, or worked with SARS coronavirus 2 or any direct ancestor to it. The same goes for any other lab in the world. In fact, leaked manuscripts show that the lab was still focused on SARS-1 related coronaviruses up through 2019. Not be convincing enough for many people, we can turn to the virus itself. Is there any evidence that the virus was engineered? Well, thousands upon thousands of scientists all over the world have examined the SARS coronavirus 2 genome, and none have made a credible case for such a thing, because it contains no signs of being artificially created or engineered. On the contrary, it shows many hallmarks of evolutionary processes.
So do dogs. How do you engineer a virus? No, Fauci lied under oath. And we know there was a simulation a year before.
Event 201 was a global pandemic simulation exercise held in New York on Friday 18th. The event brought together business and public health leaders from around the world to plan what would be done in response to a simulated coronavirus pandemic. The event took place approximately 1 month prior to the first recorded cases.
Of course, we all know the COVID haven't been in the body for someone dies of any reason. Like if a horse happens to have COVID, they say the horse had COVID. That is why ivermectin appears to be effective against, might be a reason ivermectin might be effective against COVID, because the death in the first place with correlation, taking credit for more deadly things like worms.
Dr. Fauci,
Okay, what I think happened, maybe they didn't know. They probably wondered if they might be responsible or partly responsible. I don't know if they got specimens from that lab or at least viral specimens from that wet market. So both are true. But the reaction, as if, oh shit, what if it was, what if we are responsible? What if we simulated? I mean, you themselves are paranoid. Maybe the people who point the string are the conspirators themselves might actually be idiots with just as big deep pockets and media control. The typical debunking is, if we had control so much, it would be gods. And the fact that we got caught, this proved we did the thing we got caught doing. Because to get away with it and not without getting caught, we'd have to control everything. You have to be gods. Did not get caught, which apparently did. Their typical debunction is their own god complex. That's their typical debunction. Maybe they feel good like being a conspirator. They themselves like to pretend they're cartoon villains.